Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Thank you once again for joining me here on another week, on another episode. I'm here with Kameran Thompson Al-Areqi from Recognized Potential Coaching. Kameran is a marriage counselor, and I thought it would be of real interest to get her on just to go through some of the things that she feels are elements that lead to a healthy relationship, a healthy marriage. Obviously, with the podcast being tailored towards dads, and I know a lot of you that do listen are married, I just really feel that this is going to be a great conversation. So, Kameran, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate your time. Do you want to just start off and just let everybody know the Kameran story? Where'd you start?
Yeah.
How'd you get into what you're doing now? Away you go.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk to dads. I have a soft spot for dads because I feel like social media and just society in general have kind of come down pretty hard on you guys. And there's a lot that you guys need to know that mainstream media isn't telling you. So I am happy to enlighten you. Happy to be that person. My story. So I actually was an elementary education teacher for a little over a decade, taught kindergarten for most of that. I have been married and divorced and remarried, and I have two boys. One is 14, one is 3. So kind of understand that. Um, my husband is a pilot, so I completely understand, pilot, aviation, military, all of that life, totally get that. And I actually started out about 6 years ago as a life coach, got certified as that. And then there was a lady that came to me and said, can you coach my marriage? And I said, well, that's not really what I do. And she was like, well, if you don't do it, then we're getting a divorce. And so, no pressure there at all. And so I was like, okay, I guess I can try. And throughout that process, found out that I actually absolutely loved coaching couples even more so than I loved coaching individuals. And so I got certified as a level one, got my level one certification through the Gottman Institute, and also got another certification from another company. And I've been coaching couples now for a little over 5 years. I have a 93% success rate and have helped over 75 people save their marriages. I've spoken at retreats and conferences all over the US. And so that's where we're at.
Great. So, when do when do people typically come to see you to seek your help? Is it generally when things are on the rocks and things are looking a bit shaky, or is it prior to that?
Yeah, sadly, the average couple waits 6 years to get help. And so what happens is they know something's wrong, they know something's up. Obviously, if you are male, I guarantee that you're the female partner. And I use very heteronormative language, so apologies if that's not your audience. But um, what happens is women are designed to be the one that is always looking for something else that needs to be fixed. They're always looking for, like, okay, what's not completely right. I have a vision of what this relationship should be. I've had that vision since I was 6 years old, and pretending to be in a wedding dress that was actually my mom's t-shirt as I was like that kind of thing. And so what happens is the wife comes to the husband and says, it's not right, it's not right, it's not right, this needs to be fixed. And because of each other's attachment styles, because of each other, the way that you guys were raised, both of you, what ends up happening is the man ends up shutting down and is like, I've done everything that I can. I don't know what else to do. And so they head down this fork in the road of either getting help and coming to me, or they get a divorce. And the sad thing is that a lot of men have had really bad experiences with counselors and therapists, and coaching, which is what I do, is very different, and it's just not talked about enough. And so a lot of men don't even know that that's an option, because it's very different than counseling. So yeah, they usually come to me when they're, I've had couples come to me that were hours away from signing divorce papers before. So
Yeah, right. And so that's when the majority of people come to you.
mhm.
Is it, I guess it's potentially one of those things where is there value in making it more of a preventative measure? So like nothing's really wrong. It's probably good for us to, start the process of, maybe we know, hey, our communication's not great. Maybe we know that there's things we need to work on, but it's not, you know, we're not at battle stations right now where we're hours away from getting divorced. Is it something that you see there's a lot of benefit in it being preventative, or is there
Oh yeah.
is it not until it gets to that point that it really becomes a value?
No, I would actually, it's just like it's a wound, right? Like it's a wound like on your arm that as soon as you start realizing that hurts, like that's there's a problem there, right? That's not normal. Let's get that wound cleaned. Let's get, some preventative measures on there. It's always more valuable and best to start there. But at the same time, your marriage is never too far gone. I promise you. It is never too far gone. If you are still married, and even if you're not, even if you have divorced and you still love your partner, but you're like, no, this is never going to work because all we do is fight, there's still value in that. If you are still fighting, I promise you there's still love there. It just needs to be uncovered.
That's it's interesting that you say that because there's obviously the space that I've been in, like the fitness space, there's a lot of people that transition into, I guess you'd call it the quote unquote life coach space. They kind of start as
Mhm.
a personal trainer. They get which is, I guess it's kind of the path that I'm on as well. So I'm actually undertaking my, to do my qualification to become a certified counselor in conjunction with everything else that I do. But, um, and they turn and there's a lot of people that have kind of in the circle of influence that I've run in where sometimes the advice is to, if it's not serving you, let it go. Like,
Yeah.
this whole element where if it's toxic, like you've got to leave and things like that. But kind of what I've heard there is that, and I don't mean that in all cases, because obviously if there's abuse and other things like that, that's obviously
Sure.
you don't want to stay around for that type of thing. But it's almost like I guess the way I'm trying to put it is, in my opinion, and this is just an opinion, it seems that there's a lot of people in today's society that are led to believe that sometimes these things aren't worth fighting for. It's not worth following
Absolutely.
through and actually trying to make it work. And so what I'm kind of hearing from you is that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like if you feel like that, sometimes it's actually better to go and get that independent advice and that outside opinion from somebody like yourself.
Yes. Here's the thing, Matt. So there is this mentality that it's the grass is greener on the other side. Well, the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's green where you water it. It's green where you take care of it, right? So here is what happens is that let's take cheating for example. Okay? Cheating is actually it's a coping mechanism. Just like sugar, just like nicotine, just like alcohol. Cheating is a coping mechanism. It's not about the cheating. It's about what's happening inside you to make you go cheat. It's not your partner. It's not your partner and their inability to listen or the fact that you're emotionally disconnected. There's so many marriages out there. I would really honestly die on the hill that the majority of marriages out there are disconnected because of life and kids and all the things, right? The issue is that marriages, if it's not serving you, quote unquote, it's not about whether it's serving you or not. Okay? Because what's going to happen Here's the analogy that I like to give my clients. When you are born and you're given an imaginary suitcase, okay? And you go through your entire life and all of your experiences and all of your education and all of your exposures. You're taking all of those things and you're packing them into the suitcase. And then you find your partner and they also have a suitcase. And so you come in, you move into this house together, you dump both of your suitcases into the middle of the living room floor, and then you start sifting through all of their experiences, all of yours, all of their education, all of yours, all of their exposures, and all of yours. And you start deciding, what do I keep? What do I set out on the shelf for everybody who comes into my house to see? What do I hide away? What do I throw away? What do I do with all of these? Now, as time goes by, let's say that the marriage it's rocky, you don't want to get help, it's struggling. You just go in and you grab all of the crap that you think is yours and you shove it back in your suitcase and you're mad and you leave. And then you get to a new house. And guess what? You figure out that not only did you grab all of your stuff, you also grabbed some of theirs. And so you're taking all of those experiences and exposures and everything, you're taking that with you to the next relationship if you do not get a massive amount of help and completely change yourself between relationships. And that's the key, because what ends up happening is, with it again, with attachment styles and all of these things, what ends up happening is you're attracted to people that are going to make you grow. If your partner is triggering you and your partner is bringing things to the surface and you feel like you're arguing all the time, it's because that's the stuff that you have to work through. And so instead of working through it, we quit and we move on to the next relationship. And then about 5-6 years down the road, once you've got into that second stage of the relationship, you find out, crap, I just married the exact same person as my ex with a different head. And now you've got the same problems that you did before. So no, it's not about the whole idea of like, just let it go if it's not serving you, and it should be easy, and it should, all of these things. No, it's baloney. It's absolute garbage. So this is that woo-woo new age stuff that's not serving you. That idea and mentality and that advice is not serving you.
It brings it back to just a constantly reoccurring topic that comes up whenever I talk to somebody, and it's having a bit of self-awareness, right? Like understanding that we're flawed human beings, and then back to, almost an old fitness analogy where anything that's going to be worth it is going to require some level of work. Like you're going to have to put the work in to come out the other side of it. And really like what you said, where it's like the grass isn't always greener on the other side, because I think in today's society, and I've been on a little bit of a tangent bashing social media lately, which is ironic given the platform that I use to promote the podcast, but it's it's like we're all constantly seeing other people's highlight reels, so it leads us to believe that there's got to be more to it, because I'm not as self-aware as I should be around the work that has to go into improving myself and improving the marriage and what I'm the ecosystem that I'm in on a daily basis. So it's really interesting that you say that, because it's just doesn't matter whether it's marriage, whether it's parenting, whether it's fitness, health, whatever it is. It's a very common theme in today's society, where it's like, hey, if it doesn't come easy, maybe we look for a different path. And it's like, well, I think that the way I look at it, and your opinion on this would be great. Sometimes there is a point where maybe you do have to look for another path, but you've got to earn the right to get to that point first by doing the work.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing. The idea of marriage, I think that what has screwed us all up is that we have this idea that marriage should make us happy. And it doesn't. That's not your partner's job. That's impossible for your partner to do. And they're by you asking them to make you happy, you're asking them to selfishly asking them to do something that you're not willing to do for yourself. That's not the goal of marriage. The goal of marriage is to grow together and to build something. When I'm speaking at retreats, when I'm doing marriage retreats and marriage conferences and things, one of the most important exercises that I have couples do, and if you don't mind, I'll tell a quick story here.
Please do.
Last year, I had a couple that came to a marriage retreat that I spoke at in Kentucky. And this couple, like, the man was he just looked pissed the entire time I was speaking, arms folded, just very like shut down, came in late the second day, like just did not even look like he cared to be there, right? Their marriage was struggling, and I had them do this exercise. I had them write down on a note card what the purpose of their marriage even was. Like, what's the purpose of your marriage? Is it to raise a family? Is it to grow God's kingdom? Is it to, be the first millionaires of both sides of your families? Like, what is the purpose of your marriage? So I had them write this down, right? And a couple of days ago, I didn't keep track of the people that was at the conference, but the lady that was friends with them and was also one of the people behind the scenes doing all the admin work for the retreat, she actually sent me the story. And this lady and her husband that were at the retreat, they picked up and they moved their entire family to Mozambique, from the US to Mozambique. Okay. And they're in the middle of the flight, and the wife starts to have an anxiety attack. And she says, "What are we doing this for? Why are we doing this? Why did we just uproot our entire family, our kids, ourselves, quit our jobs, all the things, to move back to your home country that we're going to live in the middle of, the savannah? What is the purpose of this?" And he said, "Listen, you're having an anxiety attack right now. You haven't slept in over 30 hours. When we land and you've slept, I will remind you of what this is for." So she goes out, and whether you're a believer and a Christian or not, but this is their story. So she goes out the next morning, she slept, she opens her Bible, and the card that they filled out at the retreat of what the purpose of their marriage was for fell out. And she reads that the purpose of their marriage is to grow God's kingdom in every single country in the world. Like, that was the purpose. And immediately she was like, "And now I just feel peace. I remembered why my husband, why I chose this man. I remember why we're together. I remember why, what the purpose of our marriage is for." And so I think that's the bigger point here, is to grow your marriage and have a purpose for it. But I think a lot of times what ends up happening is we have this great vision on the day that we walk down the aisle and get married together. And over time, we start taking each other for granted, and we stop believing in that purpose, or we even just forget about it. And so we start, like, it's true, the cliched saying of what you focus on grows. It's absolutely true. If you focus only on the negative of your partner, what are you going to get? More negative. If you focus on the positive of your partner and of your marriage, what are you going to get more of? The positive. And that's not to say that, like, sweep all the problems under the rug and just, paint it with rainbows and roses. That's not the idea. The idea is to go back to the purpose and remember why you chose your partner, and then fight for that. Instead of just throwing in the towel and being like, "Meh, well, then fight for that, because it's not going to come easy. Nothing worth having ever does.
Back to the purpose of the marriage, is that something that you work on the very early stages of with the people that come to see you? I mean, as you're saying that, I'm thinking of, my personal experience. We've been married for, it'll be our 10-year anniversary in a couple of months' time. So been married for a little while, and, I think we both inherently know what our purpose is, but we've never probably sat down and articulated what that is. Like, that's not something that we've gone, "Hey, like, what's the purpose? What are we trying to achieve here?" Like, we've we're very lucky with what we've been able to achieve and what we've been able to do over time, and we're very supportive of each other. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, because would you say there's a lot of couples out there that haven't actually sat down and articulated that?
Oh, 100%. I would say the majority. The majority don't know, and but that's why they also end up failing in the end. Not to say that you and your wife will, but for you guys, that's actually a really good connection exercise to sit down and say, and just bring it up and say, hey, I was talking to this lady on my podcast and she was saying this, and I think we both have the same idea, but maybe not. Like, what do you think the purpose of our marriage is? The idea is to get on the same page, and I think that's where a lot of couples struggle, is that they don't know where to start. They know what they want to do. They know that, they had these visions and they started talking about those visions when they were dating, but actually getting from point A to point B, how do we do that? Because we repeat what we catch, not necessarily what is right or what is healthy. So growing up, did you see your parents having open-ended conversations? Did you see them repairing after an argument? Or did you see them fight and then everything was just weirdly fine the next day? So now you don't know how to repair. Now you don't know how to have a healthy conversation without screaming and telling each other to shut up and, slamming doors and all of the things. Like you repeat what you're taught. So, and then that's why we have generational curses, because we're teaching our kids the same things we were taught, and their kids are, you know what I mean? And on down the line. So yeah, I do work with this. In the very first session that couples come to me, I look at coaching just like, fitness coaching. When people come to you and they're like, I want to lose, 26% body fat. I'm morbidly obese. I want to get down to 25, 26% body fat. You look at that and you're like, okay, that's your goal. So here's how we're going to get to that goal. And you outline the steps, right? When couples come to me, it's the same thing. Their goal may be, I just want to like each other. We just want to like each other again. Like, we forget love. Like, we just want to be in the same room and not want to stab each other with knives. Cool. I can get you there. Like, and even further, and we reevaluate those goals every 90 days. So couples work with me for a minimum of 7 months, because just like in the health and fitness industry, marriage is a series of habits. And so it takes a little bit of time to, rewire the brain and get rid of the old habits and then get new habits and get those put in place and implemented. So during that time, yeah, we start in the very first session. What are your goals? What is the purpose of your marriage? What is, who are you? Oh, you don't know who you are as an individual? Great. Let's start there. Like, those kinds of things. Like, we start very basic level and move up.
Does the purpose of someone's marriage change over the life of a marriage? Say, for example, sure. If and the reason I ask this is, some of the dads and some of the people that I've worked with are, you've got people that are newborns all the way through to people that have got adult children. And, you see a lot of people when their kids grow up and move out of home, that's where sometimes those marriage troubles can get triggered, because the purpose of the marriage was to help raise the kids. Now the kids are gone, that purpose has been removed. And as a result, that can start to cause some friction. So, it's like the purpose doesn't necessarily have to stay the same through the life of the marriage, right?
So in that case, what's happening is, and you do see that quite a bit, where I'm actually working with a couple right now that they're getting ready to retire. And it's like, their kids have been gone for a while, but now they're getting ready to retire. And it's like, ooh, I don't know that I like my spouse enough to be around them every day, all day long. Like, yikes on bikes. That's a lot. So, so I'm working with them. They've been married 35 years and they're coming to get coaching. So it's not necessarily the purpose in that case. What's happening is that, well, it's twofold. Part of it is purpose. Part of it, a bigger part of it, is disconnection. that what's happened is over time, they have spent so much time focusing on their kids have been the priority. And so their needs, their partner's needs, they don't know how to be friends anymore. The three main things that a marriage needs to survive is commitment, trust, and friendship. And friendship is what's missing in that moment. And maybe a little bit of trust too, depending on circumstances. But the friendship is missing. So it's been more about the kids and not enough about husband and wife. And so now kids have moved on. Then it's like, well, I don't know anything about you. So yeah, the purpose has changed and we got to get to know each other again. So that's what's happening in that instance.
And with I guess back to the kids point, with why do you feel it's important for parents to be able to display a healthy relationship for their kids? You mentioned like that generational curses and things like that you were talking about before, but why is it important? Why is it important for the parents to make sure that they're displaying that for their kids? Because I think we all know that our kids pick up everything we do, whether it is said or unsaid, probably more unsaid than the stuff that's said. How easily do you think that kids pick up on that stuff?
Oh, I wish I had the entire hour to talk about this, but to condense it as much as I can. So I told you in my bio, right, that I was a kindergarten teacher, right? Kids from birth to 7 are like tiny little sponges. Their brain waves are actually in a theta state, which is what we are in when we're sleeping. And so their subconscious is developing from birth to 7. So everything that happens between that time will develop who they think they are, who they believe, like all of their self-beliefs, all of their traumas, all of the filters that they look through the entire world through. Everything that they are going to take with them for the rest of their lives is developed in that birth to 7. 80% of what you're going to know in your life by the time you are 7 years old. So here's how that impacts. Here's how the family dynamic impacts, right? As a wife, my boys, my children are looking at me to say, what's acceptable? What is a wife supposed to be like? Does she cook? Does she clean? Does she, help my dad with what he needs help with? Does she take on, different roles? Does she, what does she do? How does she react? What's healthy? What's not? Okay. If I had daughters would be looking at me as their mom saying, okay, this is the type of wife I need to be. This is the type of woman I need to be. Now let's flip that. For dads, my boys are looking at their dad saying, how does my dad treat my mom? Because that's how I'm going to treat my future wife. How is my dad as a man? Because that's the type of man I'm going to be. So they're looking at their mom and their dad for different things, right? So as a mom, if I don't want my boys to marry women like me, I need to fix some things. For my husband, my boys looking at him, if he doesn't want our boys to turn out like him, he needs to fix some things, right? So now here's how that impacts the rest of their lives. As a teacher, it was blatantly obvious the kids that came from divorced families and the kids that came from happy homes where healthy relationships were modeled. Kids that came from divorced families have more anxiety. And this is at 5 years old on up to, I taught through 4th grade at various times, but clear up to 4th grade. I mean, kindergarten through 4th grade, which is in the States, it's like 10 or 11 years old. it's very obvious. The kids that are frazzled, the kids that are anxious, the kids that need to know, like they're asking questions like, what's next? What are we doing next? How many minutes until we do this? That's anxiety. And a lot of that stems from being at home. Now, okay, what happens if you have a son, for example, that comes in that doesn't have a dad? He doesn't know what a man looks like. When he gets to puberty, that is going to very much be a struggle for him, because he is going to say, I don't know how to interact with girls. I don't know how to interact in social settings. I don't know what it looks like to help my mom out around the house. I don't, like, what is my role? What is my purpose? So talking about the purpose of a marriage, it goes down to the purpose of your children and what their identity becomes. And that's where it leads into bigger problems, because if your kids don't know you and you're not setting a good example for them, they don't know how they're supposed to be. And so they just kind of fly by the seat of their pants, or they latch on to another friend's dad or something like that. And that may not be the role model that they need to be, repeating.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's one of those topics I guess you could talk about for hours as to it's child development and being the example for your children and making sure that what you're displaying is what you want them to see. And I was talking to another lady on the podcast who, she specializes in, psychology around raising boys, and we were talking about just self-awareness. It's just comes back to that self-awareness piece we touched on earlier, right? Like knowing what you're doing and how that impacts them. And the other thing is too, they're going to display, they're a mirror of you. They're going to mirror all your behaviors, good and bad. And the stuff that I tend to get frustrated with my kids about is all the stuff that maybe I'm not super happy about. That little thing that you're doing, you've gotten that from me. And the reason I'm getting frustrated with you is because I'm not entirely happy that I do that myself. So it takes a bit of a step back to go, all right, I need to do something about this, because it's if I keep doing it, they're going to think it's acceptable. And it's the same from a relationship point of view.
Yeah. An exercise that I like to have my clients do is, when you start getting frustrated with your kids about this, ask yourself what you're making it mean about you. So for example, I was just having this conversation with my husband yesterday. We were talking about judgmentalism and how when your kid just absolutely loses their mind in the middle of a store, right? Is it because, and you get upset, you're making it mean something about you because you're afraid. It's not that your kid's having a meltdown. That's not the problem. The problem that you're making it mean is that you're afraid of everybody else judging you, and you're making it mean that you're a bad parent. Not that your kid's having a moment, right? They might be 3. They might be, however old. So ask yourself, all behavior, it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, all behavior is communication for a met or an unmet need. So if your kid's losing their mind, they have a need that's not being met. Are you at the store too close to nap time? Are they hungry? Are they thirsty? Are they simply not getting what they want, and that disappointment, they don't know how to handle that. They don't know how to manage that emotion, right? So for us in our generation, and I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but in the United States, basically the status quo of parenting was, stop crying or I'm going to give you something to cry about. Which is the most ridiculous saying in the world to me. But it was something like that. It was go to your room until you're good. Why? What does that even look like? I'm a kid. How do I even know what that is? Right? And so, because I'm not even taught that. So a lot of times we're asking our kids to be responsible for our emotions when we're not even responsible for our emotions. And so it's just stuff like that, what are you making it mean about you? What are you sitting there saying, what's everybody thinking about me? Well, it's not about you. It's about your kid that's having a meltdown because they have an unmet need. And on the flip side to that, though, the positive if your spouse is loving on you and they're wanting to be intimate and they're wanting to, like go do things with you and have those, build that friendship and have those interactions together, obviously you're doing something right. They're communicating that their needs are being met. If your spouse is coming to you being like, man, I'm just really mad right now, or like, I don't like it when you do this. I don't like it when I come to you and talk to you and you say, yeah, I hear you, I'm going to do this, but then your words and actions don't match up. I don't like it when I'm talking to you, but you're on your phone and it seems like your phone is more important. It's not about you. And that's one of the things that I really want men to understand, is that women are emotional, men are logical. Okay? Like, this is just how it is. It's how it's been since caveman times, right? So when your woman comes to you and she's having an emotional moment, it's not about your logic. Okay? When you're like, well, just stop talking to Betsy who keeps, making fun of your hair or commenting on the dress that you're wearing or whatever. Like, just stop talking to her. No. It's not about that. What she needs to hear is, yeah, that must be really frustrating. You don't need to fix it all the time. Sometimes you just need to let her talk and validate her feeling. That's it. That's all. So a lot of, and in fact, I was actually tonight, I was talking to my husband. I was like, yeah, I'm really struggling with this. I'm really frustrated with this. And he goes, I don't know how to help you. He goes, I'm sorry you're struggling. I don't know how to help you. That's fine. I don't need you to help me. I don't know how to help myself. I don't expect you to know how to help me. So, like, just you saying that you're sorry that I'm struggling and that you're here for me and you gave me a hug, like, that was enough. That's enough. So it's when you try to fix it that it's actually making the problem worse than it is better. So we kind of got off on a tangent there, but
no, it reminds me of a line I've had to learn. I learned a little while ago, and it's if we start talking, it's are we fixing or am I listening? Like that,
yes.
And it's just so I know what direction we're taking, because
Yes.
my default mode is to want to fix everything, as you mentioned, as it is with most
every
men,
other man in the world has the same default.
You come to me with a problem, I'm going to want to fix it. But now, and especially now too, because my daughter she's about to turn 9, so she's got all her own big emotions that she's dealing with now, and I'm glad it's a line and a phrase that I learned before I had a 9-year-old daughter, because it's definitely something that has equipped me well, or better now, and hopefully into the teenage years. But you're mentioning listening and just being empathetic to the situation. And one of the things that on the questionnaire that you filled out, you had a line on there about men and their effort being good enough, like your effort is good enough, and that was something that you felt a lot of men needed to hear. Would you mind elaborating on that a little bit for me?
Yeah. So, okay. So I've mentioned attachment styles a couple of times in the podcast here. And here's what I will tell you, men. There is something called the loop of doom. Okay. So statistically, what happens is that 75% of men with an insecure attachment have an avoidant attachment. Okay. 75% of women have an anxious attachment if they're insecure. Okay. Most people are insecure in the world right now. All right. So here's what that looks like. When your wife, who has an anxious attachment, and this can be flip-flopped, but just go with me here. So when your woman comes to you and you feel attacked, okay, you feel like she's just interrogating you, it's because she's anxious. She's feeling some sort of way about the relationship. She needs reassurance. So here's what that's going to look like. Questioning. What are you doing? Well, who are you going out with? Well, who was that on the phone? Oh, it's kind of late that you're getting a text. Who was that from? It's not that she's interrogating. She's scared. Deep down, she's scared. Okay. So questioning, criticism, blaming. You never take out the trash. You didn't take out the trash this morning. She's frustrated. Okay. So here's what happens though. When that that line of questioning or the criticism or the blame or the shame comes in, what it triggers in men is, I'm a failure. I'm so stupid. My effort for her will never be good enough. So it makes you angry. Why does it make you angry? Because anger is, again, statistically, the only emotion that is acceptable with men. If you're sad, you're weak. If you're frustrated, then, well, that's anger. That's, that goes into something else. If you're depressed, you're weak. If you are, well, you can be happy, but don't be too happy, or you might be labeled something else. You know what I mean? Like all these things. So if it's anger, it's fine. So here's what happens. Then you start to avoid. You start to numb out. Alcohol, drugs, numbing out on your phone, watching golf, watching, binge watching a show, binge watching, back to back to back NBA games or what have you. Okay, so then here's what that does to her. That actually goes to her and makes her think he doesn't care. I can't trust him. He said he would take out the trash and he didn't. So I can't trust his words and his actions to match up. So for men, it's my effort will never be good enough. For women, it's I will never be good enough. I will never be good enough for him to care. So then instead of numbing out, she leads to more questioning, more blaming, more shaming, all of that, right? And around and around we go. Okay? Here is what you need to know, men. Your effort is always good enough. Always good enough. And, not but, and it's also like a concentration. Okay? It's like gasoline. If you put full gasoline in a car, it's going to go real far. It's going to go really well. If you dilute that gasoline with water and you put 10% gasoline in there, but the rest of the 90% is water, your car's probably not going to go very far, right? So it's the same thing in your marriage. You have to change the concentration of where you're putting the effort, all right? For women, everything is emotional and mental. For men, it's visual and logical, all right? So let's talk about in the bedroom how this works, right? For women, you're going to hear a lot about mental load. If you're on social media and you have not heard about mental load, I don't know what you're following, but it's everywhere right now. And this is why. Women are like ovens. Men are like microwaves. Okay? It doesn't take very fast for you guys to get turned on. It takes a real hot minute for us to get turned on. So men, here's the deal with your wives. If your wives are seemingly not enjoying the experience or they're rejecting you a lot, it's because mentally they are exhausted. That physically they can handle taking care of the kids and cooking the meals and maybe even working a full-time job. Mentally, they cannot. And a lot of it is what you don't see. So let's take getting groceries and making meals, for example. It's going through the fridge. What do we already have that's going to go bad? What do we need to buy? Making a list, ordering the groceries, or even going to the grocery store and picking them up. We get the groceries, we bring them home, we get them out of the car, we put them away, then we can start making the meal. Okay? There's a lot of invisible labor there that we're not seeing. So asking your wife things like, hey, how can I show up for you this week? How can I show up for you today? Sitting down every week, one of the resources that I give every single couple that I work with is a weekly marriage business meeting. It is literally one sheet of paper that gets everything on there. What are the events? This kid has a dentist appointment Tuesday. This kid has soccer at the same time. Which one are you doing, dentist or soccer? So figuring out those teamwork activities, checking in, asking questions like, what's it like to be with me right now? Well, actually, your tone has been really short lately. Or I don't feel like I'm getting enough physical touch that's not sexual. I don't feel like I get enough help around the house. Don't take that as an attack. Take that as that's a challenge for you. Oh, you don't think I'm helping around the house? Cool. I got you. You're never going to see anyone that helps around the house more than I do this week. Like, I got you. Your marriage will exponentially change for the better if you stop looking at things that your wife is saying to you as an attack and start looking at it as a mission. When you do that, your entire mindset changes. And then your marriage is going to change too. And consequently, the way that she responds to you, because you as the husband, you're the leader. So if you've got better concentration in just a few key areas, it's like your car. If the engine isn't running right, you tweak a couple of things and then your car runs better. Guess what? Your marriage is the exact same way.
So one last question to finish off.
Sure.
Why isn't all conflict bad?
So when we grow up, we're watching our parents fight and the energy shifts in the room and it doesn't feel good. So then we attribute that conflict to being bad. But then when we get older and we get into a marriage, what ends up happening is if you actually do conflict well and you repair afterwards, conflict can be a beautiful way to connect with your partner and deepen that connection. So the key piece that's missing that we often didn't see from our parents is that repair piece. Hey, I'm really sorry that, when you said this, I actually took it to mean this, and I know that my tone got, a little bit spiky, or I know that, this affected you in this way. I'm really sorry. Giving those 5-step apologies. I'm sorry for, I know it impacted you in this way. In the future, I'm going to do this. Will you forgive me? So saying like a full apology is a really big key point to having conflict not be something that just, gets swept under the rug and we move on. We build resentment out of that. That repair is really, really important. And then of course, changed behavior too. So if we have all of those elements, we can actually use conflict to our advantage to better our marriage instead of just feeling like the energy shifted and like, what do I do with this? I don't know.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I really appreciate your time. Do you want to, before we wrap this up, do you want to let everybody know where they can find you, website, social media links, and that way they can jump on and follow along?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is www.recognizingpotential.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at divorce.proof.marriage. I also have a podcast myself that is the Divorce Proof Marriage podcast. So you can pretty much find me in any of those places.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to pop the links to all of those in our show notes. So if you want to follow along with Kameran and what she's doing, you can find it all in the show notes. You'll be able to find this episode on our YouTube channel, on all the good podcast platforms, and then also up on our Facebook page as well. So Kameran, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate the knowledge that you've shared with everybody here today. So thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.